Have you ever noticed the difference between the oldest and newest Minecraft structures, or wondered why they had to remove old structures like this one? What purpose did it even have? Why was this structure cancelled, and what the heck was this meant to be? Let's discuss all of those questions by diving into the full history of structures in Minecraft, including the secret ones you probably didn't know about. But we do need to begin at the start of structures, and here is an interesting fact: the first 3 structures added to Minecraft were all removed later, so here are 3 structures which don't exist in Minecraft anymore. The most famous one might be this big brick thing, but the very first structure was actually the starter house. This structure was added to Minecraft sometime in late January of 2010. The reason we can't be more specific is because although the version is known to have existed, the exact version that would have it, that we could check out and be sure of, actually is one of the lost versions of Minecraft. No one has any saved copies of it because no one knew it would become the major success that it did, and so we have to be relatively sure it came out sometime around then. But this is what the starting house looked like. As you can see, it is mostly like a mob spawner. It's 7x7x4, and yes, it is made up exclusively of mossy cobblestone. It looked very weird back then, but even if you convert it into modern day Minecraft with our new textures, you can still see this is a very weird idea. But this place was meant to help out new players by giving them a full stack of every block in the game. That is, of course, a very useful boost to Minecraft early game. And wait, 99 is the max stack from back then? Yes, you are seeing that correctly. There was 99 of every block in the game, and so although the idea of giving players a full stack of all blocks is very alien to modern day Minecraft, the other alien thing is the fact that they did stack up to 99, and what's really funny to me is they did later update this, but the stack size was changed to be 100 alongside adding coal, diamond, iron ingots, and gold ingots, and so this was a very early time for Minecraft, long before 99.9999% of players had started playing it, and that's why you probably also don't know that they changed the starting house to look like this. This is much more like a traditional starter house, using stone for the floor and wood for the walls, and this is probably the version that you saw. However, even this was decided 2 weeks later to not really fit with the idea of Minecraft's infinite worlds, and so they removed the starting house at the beginning of InfDev, and that was in February of 2010, just a month after it being added. They also added another structure in this same month. This one is called the Obsidian Wall, and it would always mark exactly where 0, 0 was, because one wall would run along the x-axis at 0, and the other one would run along the z-axis at 0, meaning the point where they intersect would tell you exactly where the middle of your world is, or where 0, 0 is in your world at the very least. And so this was later removed because it was mostly used for debugging and for internal developers to work out. When this was added, there was still no block dropping in the game. If you'll believe it, when you broke a block, it wouldn't give you anything. And so the other block that was added with a very weird intent was the brick pyramid. This is a tall experimental structure that was so ridiculously large, it took 7 years for Minecraft to add a structure that was anywhere near the size of this. But yeah, it was a giant brick pyramid. It ran into all sorts of issues that they were presumably bug fixing, and although this thing was filled with so many bugs that it was also removed a month later alongside the Obsidian Walls, it did do a lot of the groundwork for what might be the first structure in Minecraft. So bear in mind, the true first structure in Minecraft is this, the starter house. What do you think the first actual structure was? It is the dungeon, and I'm gonna be honest, I think I can see where they got their inspiration from with this thing, but this is the oldest structure which still exists in modern day Minecraft. It came out on June the 25th of 2010, so about 6 months after the first real structure was added and 3 months after the other structures were all removed. And as you can see, it's relatively small, but it is one of the mainstays which still exists. And at the same time, they added a brand new item, the saddle, which could only be found in these dungeons. This sounds like a good reason to go after these things. However, in reality, these were only used to saddle pigs, and you know, that's a really exciting gameplay mechanic now, but obviously this was before carrots on sticks, so you could put the saddle on a pig and you could sit there, and that's how the saddle was for over a year, by the way. But that's an entirely different story, perhaps for a different time. Let's instead talk about the next structure added to Minecraft, the 5th structure, if you will, because it came in beta 1.8 in 2011, and it wasn't actually one structure, but allow me to explain. The Adventure Update, also known as beta 1.8, was the last major update before they completed the game. Obviously, they needed to add an ending, and they needed to make sure that everything was perfect on that level, but they also needed to finish out a bunch of features, and as it so turns out, they hadn't added a single structure to the game in over a year, so they figured they would round out this update with 3 separate structures. The abandoned Mineshaft, the Stronghold, and the NPC village were all added at the exact same time. Of course, all 3 structures went through their own weird changes. I mean, the abandoned Mineshaft from back then was a little different to how it is now. The Stronghold used to look like this when it was first formed. Yes, the end portal really was made out of those weird blocks, and even stranger, the villages used to look like this, and although you're probably aware of that because they only changed it a few years ago, the truth is this was actually not the finalized design. When they first built the villages, they looked like this instead, and isn't that incredibly interesting? There's no real structure to this village pathway. Instead, you can just kind of see a lot of buildings, and they're very loosely placed around each other. Honestly, every time I look at this, I'm reminded of just how much refinement went into even the worst Minecraft structures, and the fact that they got 3 of these over the line in one update was incredibly impressive. However, even though the adventure update was great in a lot of other ways, it added, as an example, the sprint and hunger system we know to this day. I think the structures it added were a really easy attempt to make the underground more interesting and to make the overworld more interesting than just base terrain. However, when you look at the villages from back then, not only did they look kind of terrible by comparison to today's wonderful places, but you'll notice how none of the clips of it here have villages in, and that is not some massive oversight. The NPC village, the village structure that was added to the game and was designed to be filled with villagers, did not have any for quite some time, and so there were these villages that existed and there was basically no purpose to them. Honestly, it's pretty impressive when you compare that to what would come out today. Adding something to the game and just saying, yeah, we don't know what it's going to do, and we might not even add that for quite some updates, would be a shock to see in modern day Minecraft, just a sign of the changing standards. But yeah, also the Stronghold didn't have a purpose before the Ender Dragon, and the abandoned Mineshaft was just a weird novelty find underground. Honestly, all 3 of these structures kind of sucked a little bit before they later got their purpose, but I think that's actually not a bad thing. I think early day Minecraft was more free to just experiment and throw stuff into the game and see how people liked it, and it meant that you were never quite sure if something was going to be amazingly useful or if it was going to be a dud feature that would later get its purpose, and there's something about that I've always found to be special. Speaking of things I've always found to be special, this update really was one of the ones that has a special place in my heart. It could be that I'm feeling very biased towards it because I have just been playing Minecraft for so long, and this was the first major update I got back in Minecraft console. In fact, my very Let's Play world, you know, this episode of the Let's Play you've been seeing little clips of, this was in beta 1.8.2, except its console equivalent, which when it released on October the 16th of 2012, this was the update I decided to launch my Let's Play world on, and so all of this terrain, which is kind of iconic in the world now, actually came from that very update. So obviously I have a particular bias towards it, but I do also have to say that yeah, it was an update of just throwing things into the game and seeing if they could make them more useful later. And so the Nether Fortress was added in 1.0.0, adding the first Nether structure to the game, but it wasn't until 1.2 where they finally decided to get their act together and release what might be Minecraft's most iconic structure to this day. Can you name it right now? Bear in mind, the Nether Fortress was the 8th structure added to the game, and the 9th one was perfect. What do you think it is? It's one so perfect you might even forget about it. It's one that reminds you that no matter how bad your day is going, it could be doing desert well. Minecraft's best ever structure was added to the game March the 1st of 2012. This was a revolutionary update that increased the height limit, but the biggest thing for every single player was this, the brand new desert well. This is a revolution in the world of structures, because now if you were in a desert, which is a famously water-free place, there is no water found anywhere around here, trust me, there's just none of it. You can now find water in the middle of these places if you have a bucket to take it away. Wow, that is amazing. It's even an infinite source. Okay, I know I make a lot of jokes about the desert well, and so it might be hard to work out my true opinions on it, but while researching another video, we actually found my Java 1.3.2 playthrough. This is my first time ever playing Java 1.3, so there's a lot of features I encountered for the first time in this playthrough, and one of the very ones you can find are my first experiences with a desert well. And so I feel like we have to watch that together, right?
This is strange. What is this just natural building that just... There's no way this can be natural, can it? Yeah, this can't be natural because it has a sandstone slab on the top. So does this mean I have to dig down?
I'm just so confused, and I'm just wandering around this thing, and I'm like, this doesn't feel big enough to be a structure, but also it clearly can't be, you know, a part of the world, like a weird coincidence. And so I just run around there with an axe being quite confused. Also, apparently I used a skin that looked like Link back then. Man, times have changed her. But funny enough, I just want to, while we're in this same time, in this exact same video, because this was 1.3, the same update that villagers were added in, I actually find villagers for the first time, and I think I have a pretty good summary of how they work.
But yeah, there's villagers that buy and sell stuff for stuff. For instance, this is an awful deal, but this one will give you leather boots for 3 emeralds, and this one will give you free bread for an emerald. So yeah, if you want to buy and sell things at bad prices, I guess villages are the way to do it.
Honestly, that first impression has stuck for a really long time. Now you can climb up the village tech tree, but the whole point of villages are bad things at bad prices. I totally agree with past Toycat there. By the way, this is a full hour, 12-minute long video. These were hour-long Let's Play episodes, so you can watch 7 hours of Toycat playing Minecraft 1.3.2, with episode 5 being titled Cave Spiders. Hopefully that was a fun reminder that early Minecraft structures kind of sucked. I mean, we have 8 of them in, this is the 9th structure they've added, and the amount of value they added across all of them is not very far off 0. It's better than not having any structures, but it is a real pain to add them and make them great. However, I think it was 1.3, this very same update I was just playing, that actually added the first 2 structures that are so good they still are considered to be worthwhile today, and that is the Desert Pyramid and the Jungle Pyramid. The Jungle Pyramid isn't a jungle at all. In fact, they're nowadays called the Jungle and the Desert Temple. However, these were both added in 1.3, and both of them took advantage of new redstone features to present a challenge to the player, which they could be rewarded if they overcame. The Jungle Temple is found in... you guessed it. And these structures make players descend into the dark, where you'll go over some accidental tripwire hooks and be fired at from some arrows in dispensers. Very fun little concept, very interesting the first few times you are fired at. However, in reality, there is just a single chest to reward you for this, and then there is a second chest to reward you for doing this lever puzzle. In reality, it's not a puzzle, you just put the levers like this, and boom, it reveals a chest on the other side. The Jungle Temple is still, to this day, one of the only naturally generated uses of redstone in the wild, definitely the most advanced, and it's very interesting when compared to the Desert Temple, which is a big pyramid, and when you step inside it, you'll find these weird blocks on the floor. If you know to follow their hint and to mine down from them, you'll find this lovely place with 4 chests. And obviously there's a pressure plate here, and it's a good idea to hit that, because if you do, it makes a weird ticking noise. That probably boosts the loot from the chest, so you can keep going into these, and boom, wow, isn't there a learning lesson from this?
Yeah, on PC you don't have to eat to recover health directly, you eat and then oh god, that's not good, is it? Wait. Oh, whoa! Whoa! What just happened?
Not only do you die from this, but there's 9 TNT, deliberately enough to make a giant chasm in a cave, but also to blow up all of the loot found inside of the chests. So there's a valuable lesson here, which is to go in carefully in both structures. And honestly, I think the Desert Temple and the Jungle Temple are still loved structures, even to this day, but I don't think they're necessarily loved because they're so well designed. Any Minecraft player trips up on them, maybe the first or the second time they encounter them, but every single time you go into one of these now, you know exactly what to do. You mine down, you place some blocks, you very deliberately mine the pressure plate, maybe even take the TNT with you, and then you grab all of the loot in the chests, which was absolutely top notch. Honestly, the thing that made these structures so good compared to previous ones probably was the loot, and this brings us into the really interesting discussion about how good natural structure loot should be in Minecraft. So at this point, Minecraft has just 3 structures that are intended to have loot, and so what do you do to incentivize people to go to these new structures? You give them really good stuff. The valuable minerals that you're meant to find underground, the golds, the irons, and even sometimes diamonds are thrown into these chests, with the incentive being you want to go there to find this great stuff. And that made perfect sense when there were just 2 structures, but then every time since then where Minecraft has struggled to add something, the biggest examples being the blacksmith chest or the improved mineshaft chests or the shipwrecks or the Woodland Mansion, literally has diamond blocks floating around in it, by the way, like to incentivize you to go to these places. They're like, what do players love? Players love diamonds. It's Minecraft, right? And so it's a big thing they go through. However, ultimately this leads to the devaluation of those same things. The best way to find diamonds still is to mine, but a lot of people don't bother with mining in this game that has, what's the first half of the craft? I don't even know, but people don't bother with that particular part of the game, because instead you can find the stuff while doing other important things. This is something they had to balance by adding netherite later down the line as something they specifically don't add to chests. Sometimes sometimes you find a little bit of scrap, but very rarely will you find a full-on piece of netherite gear. And so as a result, there is now a specific tier which is only found outside of that, and instead they've been working on how to make loot more interesting, because end cities were very over the top, but we'll have to get to that later. End cities were very over the top in terms of just giving you everything, and so the new solution they used for the bastions and for the ancient city was, what if we had loot that was specific to your situation? So bone blocks being found in the bastion are not the most popular thing, but they're interesting. But having the ability to find a crossbow and some arrows, or even some special arrows if you're playing Java, and even better, there's this music disc. I haven't heard it yet. Is it any good? Being able to find all this specific stuff made the bastions quite interesting. And then the ancient city went a step further, adding a specific enchantment you can only find here, and also adding a brand new type of compass, you hear about this, as well as the specific disc. So 3 separate pieces of loot, enchantment, disc, and recovery compass, and instead of giving you just diamonds everywhere, it specifically gives you things that are found in that case. And I thought that was a really clever idea, but this is the struggle you're going to see that every structure has from here on out, about how do you make it interesting. The witch hut, which was the next structure added, has no chests and no loot, and so most people, when they find them, it's just the ability to kill one witch, and that's kind of it. They've improved it so many times with the cat and the flower pots and now on Bedrock you can find potions in the cauldron, which is kind of exciting, but for most players it's still just oh, that technically counts as a structure, whereas the desert temple is you must go in there at all costs. How can they encourage you into a structure without doing that? That is something the witch hut didn't answer very well, but what I thought was a really good answer was the next structure added to the game after the witch hut, which, fun fact, is also known as the swamp pyramid. But in 1.5, wait, is that, it was 1.9 they added igloos? They feel so much older than that. In 1.9, apparently, they added igloos to the game. So these igloos were really interesting, and they came with a cute little mechanic, which is that they mostly just spawn, and it's a free opportunity to sleep, have a furnace, and a crafting table. It's a pre-built Minecraft house. What is there not to love? I hear people used to order these from catalogs, but you know, it's wonderful on that level. But then also, for the inquisitive player, 50% of these structures would have a hidden basement below them. Obviously, to you and I, this is like something you just kind of know to check intuitively, but for a brand new Minecraft player, you would be mind blown if you found this secret trapdoor and you'd want to go down it, right? And what happens when you go down? You find these 2 villagers with a sign pointing at one another. This is a layer of intrigue that is so cool, because the structure then gives you a chest which has coal and other weird stuff, but a golden apple crucially, and it gives you a brewing stand which has a splash potion of weakness inside of it. This is a really fun thing because it gives you all of the ingredients you need to make one of these guys into the other. Either you break the blocks down and you get 2 zombie villagers, or you throw your splash potion of weakness and the golden apple at the zombie villager and you get something special. I do have to say, it sounds like a really good idea, but how many players are going to think, oh, if I give the golden apple to the villager, except I've got to make sure I throw a splash potion of weakness first? No one's going to put that together, I think, if we're being realistic, but I do like the idea that it is teaching you a mechanic, and at the very least, if you know about it tangentially from watching a YouTube video, you'll know how to do it for the first time in this place. I think that's beautiful, personally, but also, have you ever mined your way around one of these? Let's mine all the blocks right here. What do you find in the corners? Specifically, there is some polished andesite. They added the weirdest Easter egg around this place, just to, I don't even know why. I've spoken to Minecraft developers, and even they don't know why this block is there. There is a layer of intrigue to this structure that made it one of the first successful structures that didn't just require on saying, ooh, here's some amazing loot, because also in 1.9, they added the end city, which is the much more popular structure because it gave you unique loot. It gives you the, sometimes, obviously, 50% of them have the elytra found inside of them. Wow, that is a crazy bit of loot. Also some potions, and there's a couple of chests and these shulker things that are apparently going to be useful at some point later. But as well as these 3 things, you find these chests. Look at this. Look how many diamonds there are. Look at this other one. It's filled with enchanted diamond gear. You get a lot of gold, you get a lot of iron, and you get so many diamonds, it genuinely devalues them to the point of nothingness. I think this structure made some sense, even though it was, you know, like it gives you so many diamonds, but it's at the very end of the game. quite literally, as you can see looking around here. It gives you so many diamonds, and so I think it's actually balanced in the place that it is as a way to get diamonds by exploring. But because there are so many ways to get diamonds by exploring, it really just cements in the game progression that the best way to find diamonds is you go out and you find them in structures. Instead, maybe what might be more interesting if there were end diamond ores and you could find those around the end cities, and those could be mined to give you a bunch of it. Now you would think to yourself, I'll go mining in the end as an example, but you know, I think we're going off topic from structures, but that's an important point, right? Let's come back to this. The end and every single structure they've added has come back to this same exact problem of they can incentivize you using these valuable minerals all they like, but ultimately Mojang knows they have the incentives that players want, but giving those players the incentives they want to make a short-term good update were making the game and the experience worse in the long run. Like I said, they could fix that by adding netherite, but now there is a new thing that players want to get their hands on, and ultimately that's something they could have fixed by making these exact same incentives, maybe just a little bit better. But that is a change they had to make, perhaps you could say a structural change they had to make towards structural loot. But the most interesting thing about the End City is not just its loot, that's the reason that you want to come here so often, but I think the End City is genius, and allow me to explain why by giving you a basic run through. You come into this thing and you're immediately greeted by two shulkers, so you'll learn how to fight them pretty early on, but you probably won't immediately die because it's just two of them. You'll take a lot of full damage if you're not expecting it, and you'll be really kind of scared of this new floating illusion. Then when you want to come through this thing, you've got to do this weird set of parkour, which is honestly not that hard in regular Minecraft, but it feels claustrophobic because you don't know when you're next going to be hit by one of these shulkers. And then you end up in this room where you're just surrounded by them, and you're floating and just being hit over and over and over again to the point where you almost want to float away out of there. You realize that the floating is both a fear, but it's also a way you can get away from them. And then the design kind of looks like a giant tree, but it really encourages you to pick different directions to go in to maybe find the best stuff. And then the best bit, which I didn't even discover until recently, is they have ender chests inside of each of these things. That's probably just there because they added the ender chest and they wanted people to be excited. But here's something I didn't even think about. The ender chest is the only way to take some of this stuff, any stuff with you, back to the overworld without killing the dragon. If you come to the end islands first, which is possible, I've done it many times, if you come out here first, then putting your stuff back in the chest is a great way to be able to jump off the end and then respawn in the overworld and just craft another ender chest, and boom, your stuff has transferred with you. That is such a clever touch. This place is just filled with tiny touches that I really like, and it's the only structure the end islands have. Honestly, it's the only value the end islands have, but I absolutely think it carries this entire dimension all on its own shoulders. However, after this, Minecraft went from taking big breaks from adding structures to each update to adding basically one every single one of them. So 1.10 added the fossil, perhaps Minecraft's smallest structure, and clearly the response to that wasn't very good. So in 1.11, they added the Woodland Mansion, which was the biggest structure the game had at that point. In fact, the structure is so big they had to have the jigsaw block be in place specifically so they could build all of the sections in a world without doing it all at once. And this allowed them to also play around with the idea of what if structures were different every time you came into them. Every single desert temple is exactly like this. Every single jungle temple is exactly like this. And although 50% of igloos would have a basement, all of the other ones would still look exactly like this on the surface. Same with the swamp huts. Same with so many of the structures. And ultimately, this was something they tried to change by making a procedurally generated structure, and that is what the Woodland Mansion is. There is a dozen different rooms that can generate in this thing, and they'll generate in a random order based on the seed, meaning that basically every Woodland Mansion you go into is slightly different. In reality, this leads to a very convoluted layout where there are two directions you can go from this main area, but they'll always lead you to a dead end. Then you can climb a staircase where there's two directions you can go, and they'll usually lead you to a dead end or to the third floor, and ultimately the whole structure is basically only saved by having amazing loot, the diamond blocks I mentioned, but also by having unique enemies only found here, one of which dropped the amazing Totem of Undying. Later, they took the enemies out of the structure, and so the structure got a little bit forgotten about, but for now, the Woodland Mansion was an amazing addition in 1.11. You see how we're entering the modern era of structures, with 2018 alone giving us the ocean ruins, the buried treasure chests, and the shipwrecks. And that is just the structures that made it to the finished update, because if you go to the Minecraft live presentation for that year, and sadly, as you'll find out, it's the one that had Will Arnett during it. I love the guy, he's great in Arrested Development and BoJack Horseman, but it's so awkward to hear him talk over the trailer and have to have Jeb say this.
We'll wait after the clip.
Sure.
But there are structures which were in Minecraft at some point during these clips that we never saw, including that very same one from the clip with the, the very awkward shushing, and it makes you question, was this the showcase of what an update could be? We've seen it confirmed many times before that the drawing board, the idea list, if you will, for Minecraft updates is 5 to 10 times longer than what makes it into the finalized thing, and so maybe this was due to be one of those. I mean, if you think about it, the number of great ideas we've seen that later had to be canned is a very high one. I mean, the Warden cabin was what we first saw when the Warden was hinted to us for 1.17, but the eventual structure we got in 1.19 was actually the ancient city, but even though it's much better and bigger and more fleshed out with those unique loot things I mentioned before, it is still technically the canning of a previous structure, and so maybe that's what happened with this aquatic update. There have been many theories about these over the years, but sometimes I think, well, this was Jeb showing off the aquatic update prototype so far. Maybe he was just building a bunch of blocks in that cave where he happened to run across these things, or maybe just built this in creative to show what it would have been like if he had, because later on in this same aquatic update trailer, there is a giant house that is clearly meant to show that, yeah, this update could work great in your long-term survivor worlds, which indeed was the purpose of these 2018 structures. They are brand new things to give you a reason to go and explore more, which is why in 2019 they doubled down on the idea of new structures, adding the Pillager Outpost to the game, and although these things can be very tall in some circumstances, they are, just a very interesting structure that gave the pillagers their own purpose, while also overhauling villages. Instead of just having 3 types of village that all look basically the same, what if there were 6 distinct types of village that really varied based on the biome? That was a huge overhaul, and in fact, over Minecraft's entire history, it's the only overhaul we've really seen. They've altered structures before, the abandoned mineshaft went from looking like this to like this, obviously assuming you can call that an overhaul, it's a bit of a stretch of the term, and the Stronghold went from looking like this to like this, but ultimately most Minecraft structures retain their base appearance from when they came to the game originally, with just small changes here and there. And that is what gets me thinking, what if Minecraft could take the approach they did with Village and Pillage of changing up their structures entirely and apply that to all of the other structures that exist in the game? What if Ocean Monuments got a big overhaul? What if the Nether Fortress, which, if we're being honest, looks entirely stuck in the past, what if that could be changed entirely? There are just so many what ifs around changing old structures that it brings you into the key question of like, so what has Minecraft done about that since then? The answer is they've not overhauled old structures. Although 1.14 overhauled the villages, this was a perfect part of the Village and Pillage update. The idea was they're changing villages so much, why not change villages? And ultimately, it's something they decided not to pursue. They have continued to add new structures, with 1.16 adding the Nether fossils, the Bastion remnants, the ruin portals, and honestly, all of these structures are great, and I love the value that ruin portals provide to your world. It's again, it's one of those opportunities to show the player this is something you can make. Those obsidian portals, you just need a few blocks to finish this one up if you want to see what's in the Nether. I love the Bastion because it's a new raiding opportunity. I love that they are adding these new structures to the game, and honestly, when you look at the way a Bastion works and the 4 different varieties of it, it is a future-looking structure, but at the same time, isn't there room to update old structures as well? The answer is, I guess, unclear. What is clear, though, is that in 1.17, they added the Amethyst Geode, which is maybe the most forgotten about structure. Can you even call it a structure? It's very heavily debated. I would argue perhaps not, but I wanted to list it anyway. And then in 1.19, they added the Ancient City, which was the biggest ever structure they've gone to the game. If you look at the cubic volume of this thing, it's absolutely ridiculous, and honestly, this was the single biggest point of hype that Minecraft had for over a year. I feel sorry for King B Dogs, who was the developer mostly behind putting it into the game, because the hype and the expectation around this thing were so huge. Even though the structure added 3 brand new exclusive features, or 2 on a music disc if you want to be pedantic, as well as having a brand new mob, the most nightmarish thing the game had ever had to this point, its whole own biome just to exist inside of, this structure still kind of fell up short by some people's expectations, because people had been building it in their mind for years and years and years before it finally came out, and so when the finished thing came out, people went, oh, that's kind of cool, they take too long to get to though, so not so interesting. And personally, I think this is a great example of a feature that is aging like fine wine. The Woodland Mansion was exciting when it came out, but honestly, people have kind of forgotten about it ever since, whereas the Ancient City was a little bit underwhelming when it first came out, but honestly, every time you go into one of these in legit survival, like I did for my genocide run, like I'm no doubt going to do in the future, it is still terrifying because you're never going to feel, no matter how advanced you are in Minecraft, like you're ready for the Warden. You would have to be playing on easy difficulty and have amazing escape options available just to not feel like you have to creep around this place, and that is the beauty behind the Ancient City. I think, honestly, the Ancient City is a lesson, and really the Bastion, if we want to go a little bit, like lighter praise for that, but still say the same thing, are master courses on not only how to master structure loot, but also how to master hype behind the adding of them. Having slight different variants, having new ways for them to be, having them be an entire place, like a challenge that takes 10 minutes rather than 10 seconds, that is the way you make engaging Minecraft structures. But here's the problem, it takes a lot of time, which is why they can go for one of two routes. Either every major update, they go for a brand new mega structure that makes a certain place more engaging and interesting, and maybe you've reached too many of those, or you can take existing structures and say, what if we made those better? I think the Ocean Monument is a perfectly untapped opportunity to make the ocean, give more reasons to go there. Right now it's just sponges and I guess the blocks that it's made up of, because that's kind of unique. But what if there were more reasons to go to an Ocean Monument? What if there were more reasons to go to a Nether Fortress, or even the, if we have to go to it, the Swamp Hut, the Jungle Temple, and if you will allow me to say the most heretic thing in this entire video, what if we made the Desert Well actually useful? Okay, I've gone too far. I can't continue a video where that is the main point. I hope that you've enjoyed this sort of video. The history of videos where I guide you through the entire history of something are a lot of fun for me to make, but if you do enjoy them, please do subscribe to the channel just to let me know that you want to see more of these, because this was a lot of fun to put together, and I look forward to seeing what you have to say about which structure you think should be improved. If you want to see my personal take, I've got a whole video called Every Structure in Minecraft and How to Improve It that I would totally recommend watching, but for now, have a good day, because I'll see you in the next one.